Before we start the video, let me just show you a little animation that I put together with this Rolex watch, just so you get a better idea of where this is going. So here it is. I got some copyrighted music in the animation, so YouTube is definitely going to demonetize my ass, but they don't really pay me much for these videos anyway, so fuck them. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made the texture for the face of this watch. Let me show you what's going to happen today. If you look at this watch very closely, it's got this brushed metal like a lot of other watches do. The metal is kind of brushed outwards from the middle, so we're going to have to use some material nodes to make that. And then we're going to have to add the letters here, but the problem with the letters is you can't just slap a color texture on there because they've been carved into the surface. So the letters are supposed to be smooth, and they're supposed to be a little bit lower than the surface. So we're going to have to make a mask texture. So I'm going to show you how to make these letters and the ring that goes around here and the little logo and all that shit. And then we're going to use that with another material so you can make the nice smooth letters that have been carved into the surface. So I got a little face over here on the side. And by the way, if you watched the last couple of videos that I made about this Rolex watch, you should have a model looking pretty similar to what I have here. You shouldn't have the crown yet and you shouldn't have the bracelet yet, but we're going to make that in the next couple of videos. In this video, I want to show you the texturing and the details and stuff like that. So you should have this plate right here. Now this plate has pretty shitty topology, but it doesn't matter because it's a flat surface. I already beveled it correctly and it's not going to give us any problems like shading artifacts. So it really doesn't matter if the topology is all busted up. You should have something like this right now with the holes cut here for the little letters and the numbers for the date and shit. So you should start with something like this. Now, here's how you make the brushed metal. You're going to go over to your shading tab, and by default, guys, the shading tab is pretty shitty because you got the shader editor down here, which just splits your screen in half so you can't see shit. So I just like to go right click here, join down, just to get rid of that. I like to use this as my shader editor, as my node editor. So I'll change this from file browser to shader editor. Nobody ever uses the fucking file browser anyway. I know I never do. And then down here by default, you got your image editor, but I switched that to UV editor because the UV editor is the same shit as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware. It's the same shit as the image editor, except you can also edit your UVs. So what's the point of using the image editor? So I switched that to my UV editor. And by the way, when you got a new file, when you do changes like this, you can go to File, Defaults here, Save Startup File, and that's going to save whatever you have on the screen right now as the default file next time you start a Blender. So clean up your scene, set up your windows the way you like them, then do that Save Startup File shit. And the next time you open a Blender, it's going to be a little bit better. At least that's how I like it. So now I'm going to add a new material, and let's name this material brushed metal face or whatever. And now we got a principled node here, and the first thing we're gonna have to do is define the direction for the brushed metal. So we're gonna go Shift A and we're gonna search for a gradient texture node. Now when you plug this gradient texture node into your base color, well, you got a fucking gradient. Now of course we don't just want a default linear gradient because that doesn't do us any good. We're gonna change this here from linear to radial, and that gives us a different shape, which you can't see because for some reason it's not centered. I don't know why it's not aligned with the middle of the object by default. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, I don't know, but as far as I'm aware, you got to adjust this manually. So you got to use your node wrangler. If you don't got your node wrangler, you go up here to Edit Preferences, go to Add-ons. In the search box, you type in node, you check this box right here. That's going to give you some extra tools for adjusting the position of your texture on your face. So you select your image texture, you press Ctrl-T, and that throws in these two extra little nodes over here, which you can now use to map your shit on your object. So you select X and Y location, so you just click and drag in this mapping node. You type in -0.5, and that places this gradient texture exactly into the middle of the object. I don't know why we got to go through all this trouble. I don't know why that's not the default, but that's the way it is. So that's what we're going to do. And now, of course, we don't want to use this to define the color because our base color is just going to be black for now. And we're going to use this as a little bump map. Or we're going to use this as a vector for our bump map anyway. So what we're going to do now is go Shift A, add a noise texture node. We're going to use this to create the bumps, and then we're going to redirect those bumps so they're going outwards. So it looks like it's been brushed from the middle towards the outside. Now, if you don't know what a noise texture node is, you can plug it into base color. And you can see you just got this kind of shitty clouds texture, just random colors. They don't really look, I mean, the texture by itself is not any good, but we're going to use this to create some bumps because the way we're going to create the bumps is using the brightness of the different pixels in this texture. Some pixels are white, which is higher value, which is higher in the bump map. And some of them are purple, which is a little bit darker, so they're lower down. So it's like if you turn this into a bump map, it's going to be a bumpy surface. So of course, again, we don't want to use this as our base color, but we are going to use it as a bump map. So Shift A, add a bump node right here. And you're going to plug color into height and then plug normal into normal. And now you're going to see some bumps on your surface. Now, by default, again, they look like shit, but we got to modify them a little bit. But first of all, let's take these three nodes that we have here, our gradient texture node with the node wrangler, and you're going to plug the color of the gradient texture node into the vector of the noise texture node. And as you can see, you got to give it a couple of seconds to load up. But as you can see now, your texture has been placed on the surface differently. So now it's acting totally differently. Now it's shooting outwards. So now you can kind of see where we're getting at with this. You can increase the scale to add more lines. You can increase the roughness. You can increase the level of detail here. Let me try a different HDRI here so we can see everything a little bit better. And by default, this is a little bit too strong. So we're going to set it down to something like this. We're going to play around with these figures later on, but it's going to be something like 0.15 or something like that. You want to increase the level of detail or the roughness a little bit so you can set your lines like this. Don't worry about them too much for now. You can change them up later on because we're going to make some more changes. So what you see now is nowhere near the final result. And now this is all cute because now you got your brushed metal. If you look at your rendered object in cycles, I'm doing this in cycles because in Eevee it doesn't look any good. Maybe I just don't know how to use Eevee properly, but in cycles it just looks much better. I can wait. I can render it overnight. It's fine. It looks a million times better. It's going to give you a look that looks something like this. Now, the problem is that these lines are still way too perfect. So I want to bust them up a little bit more. They're way too clean. They're supposed to be a little bit more messy and natural looking. So we're going to combine this texture with another bump map. And then those two textures combined are going to give us the result that we want. So I'm going to select my noise texture node and my bump node. Shift D to duplicate them. I'm going to place them down here. And now we're going to combine these two bump nodes. So let's just unplug the first one. And now with Shift A, you're going to search for and add a mix node. Not a mix color node, not a mix texture node. You want a mix node. And then you're going to change the float here from, or this data type from float to vector. And you can now combine two vectors, or two purples, if you will. Okay, so you combine the first bump map, you put that into A. You combine that with the second bump map, which you plug into B. And now, if you plug the result into your normal input here, you're going to see a combination of these two bump maps. All right, the second texture by itself, now it looks like the texture that I showed you a second ago when we just used the noise texture was a bump map. It's just a wavy surface. And you can now see these two textures working together, and now they look a little bit better. You can use the slider here to control which of the bump maps is more dominant. So for example, if you take it all the way to the right, the B input is going to be more dominant. The lower one is going to be more dominant, or rather just, it's only going to be this one and you're not going to see the other one. So as you can see, now you can only see the bump map down here. But if we take it all the way to the left, now you can only see the lines. Again, you got to give it a couple of seconds so it loads up. Now you can only see the lines. But if we put this right in the goddamn middle, somewhere around here, like 0.5, like this, now you can see a little balance between the two textures. So now that looks a lot better. Now, I would love it if you could just go on the internet and you could type in Rolex watch face texture, but you're never really going to find exactly the texture that you're looking for here. Maybe it's going to give you a texture of the whole face. I mean, I haven't tried to do this, but I don't imagine that there's a texture out there where somebody supplies us with a digital file of only this surface underneath here with nothing else, so we can keep these other elements separate. I figured the best way to do this is just make it ourselves. It's not that hard. So we're going to have to create a separate image, which is going to allow us to place this material onto most of the surface, and then on some parts we're going to have the little letters carved into the fucking surface. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So first, we're going to have to make this little ring here. Now, I'm not a graphic designer. A lot of times I like to use Blender for a little bit of graphic design to create some elements because it actually works pretty well. I'm going to show you how to do that. And you can open up a new file for this if you want to. I'm going to show you how to make this little outer ring first. And then we're going to add the little text here, the little letters, and everything else that we need. So I'm going to open up a new file here. And if you want to, it's probably a good idea to go to Google, type in Rolex, and just get a reference image so you can trace it by the size and everything. And you can go Shift A, image reference, and load an image into the background so you can work over that so you can get the proportions right. But this time I'm just going to freestyle it just so you get an idea of how I'm doing this. I'm assuming that you guys know that you can get a reference image so you can do it a little bit more precisely. But I added a circle. Here, and keep in mind that we're supposed to have 60 of those little lines, okay, because each line represents 1 second, and there's 60 seconds to a minute. So we're supposed to have a circle which has a number of vertices, which is a multiple of 60. In this case, I went for 60 times 5 because I wanted 5 edges in between each line. That way I'm going to have a nice smooth circle. And then I extrude this inwards a little bit like this, so extrude, scale it down. And I would zoom in down here, and I would take 5 of these little faces like this. Well, maybe this is not the best idea. Maybe we should have used 360 because I think that's going to be a little bit better. Let's see what happens if we do 360 because I want to have 6 edges. That way it's going to be easier to work with because we're going to have an edge here in the middle so we can have 3 faces on both sides. Otherwise, if you have 5 faces, I got to select 3 over here and 2 over here. So anyway, we're going to select 6 faces a piece. And we're going to take these faces like this, inset them with I, okay? And now press X to delete these little faces like this, and select this loop, Alt right click, Control I, invert the selection, delete all the other faces. And now just go Alt S while your 3D cursor is still in the middle. You're going to do not Alt S but Alt E, spin. Use duplicates in this spin menu. And as you can see, that copies this little object and arranges it into a circle around the 3D cursor. So we want 60 instances, so we get something like this. And now also, when you do this, for some reason you get a double down here, so you can just delete the part that's been selected. You gotta select everything. These are still disconnected, so you gotta select everything and press M. Merge by distance. For me, the shortcut for that is Shift W. And then you can select this circle over here, because these lines are a little bit thicker than the upper line, than the inner and the outer line. So you want to select this circle with Alt right click, scale that shit down a little bit, so it's something like this, so they're approximately the same thickness. And you also want to scale this one up a little bit. And now we're supposed to cut out a few of these from the bottom. And by the way, we did something wrong here, because we're supposed to have a line exactly in the middle, so we're supposed to rotate this by a couple of degrees. I think 3 degrees should be fine. So let's rotate this by 3 degrees like this. And I'm gonna delete 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, so I can get a little bit of space, because we're supposed to have some letters. I think it says Swiss made, and there's a Rolex logo down here, so let's delete those. And also, if you want to be really precise, set the pivot point to 3D cursor and then extrude this out, extrude right click, and we're going to rotate this a little bit just to make this thicker. So rotate it by, I don't know, minus 0.25 degrees or something like that, whatever is going to make it the same thickness as the other one. Extrude right click, rotate by 0.25 on this side. And now if you want to turn this into a PNG, which you can use for graphic design, you can use it as an element in something else. You got to take your camera. Our camera is right here. We're going to place that in the middle, Shift S, selection to cursor. With N, we're going to set the rotation to 0, so it's facing exactly downwards, and we're going to lift it up a little bit on the Z axis. And now the camera is looking at this. You can use G and double Z to push it forwards or backwards like this. And then in your camera properties, you're going to change the lens type from perspective to orthographic, and now it's like it's 2-dimensional. Okay, so now you don't have any perspective distortion. You can zoom in a little bit here. You can change your dimensions here. Let's do 4096 by 4096. Okay, let's zoom this in a little bit further. And of course, you want this to be white. You want the background to be transparent. So you can go over here to your render settings here, and you can scroll down, find the film section, just check transparent, because that's going to give you a transparent background. And maybe you want to make this white, so maybe you want to give this a white material. Don't turn on the emission too far. You can do like 1 step, but if you turn it too far, it's going to get a little bit grainy. It's going to look a little bit too sharp in your render. So just do something like 1 or something like that. You can increase the brightness later on. And now just go render image, and it's going to render out something like this. I think we're using cycles, so it's taking way too long, but that's fine. You're going to get an image that looks something like this. I think I set my samples to fucking 4096, but anyway, when it renders, it should take you a couple of seconds. You go up here to image, and there's going to be a button. Fucking hell. Let's do this again. My fucking blender crashed because of the denoiser. You got to be fucking kidding me. Look at that. We're going to change. A brate, jebeš me, kaj je sad to? Ajde u kurac. A brate, crashao mi blender. Gledaj zbog to rendera. So anyway, once your image gets rendered, you're going to go up here to image, click on save as, and you're going to have to choose a folder to save your image. And this is the very important part, because we want to render transparency. By default, you're not going to get no transparency. So you got to go up here, change the file format to PNG, and you also got to click on RGBA, so it renders the alpha channel, which is the transparency channel. And save this as ring somewhere. I already got mine right here. Just click on save image as. Now you got that on your computer. And now we're going to pull out the almighty Canva, okay? Canva is a free online image editing program. I'm using Canva because it's totally free. Everybody can use it, and you just have to make an account. You can use Photoshop. You can use any image editing software on the planet, but I'm just trying to be considerate because anybody can use this regardless of your operating system software or whatever. Click on create a new design once you made an account, which is free. Create a new design. Custom size, you're going to type in 4096 by 4096 because you want to have a lot of pixels. You're going to do close-up shots, so don't worry about the render times. Don't worry about the file weight. This is not for video games. It's for product visualization. So create a new design, and now you're going to get your new canvas. So click on the background, click on this color wheel, set the background to black. This shit takes you 30 seconds, guys. This is a 10-year-old child can probably put this together. And now you're going to find your folder where you saved your textures. I've got mine right here. And I'm going to take this ring shit and I'm going to drop it into my file. Make sure it's centered. Make sure you follow these lines. You can use Alt so you can scale it down equally. Scale it up like this. And then that's where you're going to start adding some of the other elements here. So the way I added the Rolex logo is like this. I went to Google and I typed in Rolex logo. Okay, you go to Google Images. and just pick one which is transparent. You're not supposed to see these squares before you click on it because that's a fraud. Sometimes in the preview it looks like it's a PNG, but that's a fucking fraud. That's not transparent. If it's white background in the preview, but when you click on it it's transparent, then it's legit. Okay, maybe you can find a black one like this. It's going to be a little bit easier to work with, but anyway, we can modify that inside of Canva. And you just go right click, copy image, and then go back to Canva and just paste that there, Control V. And now you can crop that. You can scale this down a little bit, place it down here. You can crop it using these if you want to just have the text separate from the logo. You're gonna have something like this. I don't want to have the logo, I just want the text with the right font. And of course you can edit this too, so you can go over here to edit. You can go to, that's gonna open up this window. You can go to adjust, and you can turn up brightness, contrast to make it brighter. You're gonna go down and turn down your saturation because you don't want any colors. You can turn up the whites if it's still not white enough. It's supposed to look something like this. Maybe you need a higher resolution image, so maybe you can find a higher resolution image. And then the rest is pretty simple. I don't want to go through all the other little details. You click on text, add a text box, type in whatever day, date or something, whatever it says on the actual watch. That's what I put in there. And if you want to curve some text, you can add a text box down here. On the bottom it says something like Swiss space made, because we're supposed to have a little Rolex crown here. So you can place that down here, scale it down a little bit, place it down here. Go up here to your effects for this text box, and you can scroll all the way down where you're going to find curve. And that allows you to curve your text. So when you open this up, you want to take this into the negative, so it's like this. And it's a little bit of a pain in the ass to work with, but you can play around with it a little bit. You can scale it down using the little font thing up here. Make sure you find a nice font, maybe Times New Roman or something is going to look like this one here. I don't remember what I used, but it's pretty easy to do. So just play around with this curve a little bit, with the curve settings, and you're going to be able to set it up right. I don't want to sit here for 30 minutes and do fucking elementary school graphic design. Also, if you want to make this background image brighter, again, you can go to edit, adjust. You can do whatever you want here, guys. It's a pretty powerful program. I recommend you also get the full version. I recommend that you guys use this a lot anytime you're making some textures. You can make a lot of custom textures with this shit. It's pretty good stuff. It's a pretty powerful program. Once you set it all up, it's supposed to be completely black and white. Go to File, click on Download right here. And then you're going to click on download again, but that's what it is. So you can download that to your computer. And now you're going to go back to Blender, and we're going to apply this back to our watch. So let's go back to our Rolex watch here. Okay. We're going to go back to our Rolex where we got this thing here. And now we're going to use this texture that we just made as a mask to combine two materials. So in this material where we have the brushed metal, this is what you're going to do now. Move this material output node to the side. And you're going to duplicate the principled BSDF node alone, okay? You're going to duplicate that, and now you can change the color to white or something. And here's what you're going to do. Shift A. This time you want to use a mix shader node, because now you're mixing two shaders, two principled BSDF shader nodes. So plug the first one into shader 1, plug the second one into shader 2, and now you can plug the shader into the surface of the material output node. Now, the same way that you combined the other two bump maps, you can now combine these two fucking shaders, okay? So you can mix them together. Now, we don't just want to blend them all over the place to make it a great texture, because that looks shitty, but we want to use the image which we just downloaded, our texture, as a mask, okay? So it's a black and white image. And what's going to happen now, here's a little preview, so you can see it here. We're going to replace the black pixels with material A and the white pixels with material B, okay? So you can plug the color here into the factor, and look what happens now. You might have to UV unwrap this. To UV unwrap this, just select everything, go to top view with 7, type in U, and click on project from view. That's not going to do any stretching or anything. It's just going to unwrap it from the view. Since it's a flat surface, that works pretty well, so it's pretty easy. So it's supposed to look something like this right after you've added all the text. And here's what you can do now. You can take this base color, you can change it to whatever you want. You can change the colors to whatever on earth you want. You can change this color to fucking green if you want to. You can do whatever you want. I'm just going to go black and white just to keep it simple. And there you have your white text. You probably want to make this shiny, so you want to reduce the roughness on this, but maybe not too much. And the other thing, the last thing you want to do is add a normal map to make the letters look like they've been carved into the surface. And here's how you do that, okay? Here's how you can make your own normal maps. You go back to Google and you type in normal map generator, okay? You type in normal map generator on Google, and you can probably also do this in any image editing software. I usually just use PaintNet. You can use it in Photoshop or anything else, but if you don't got any of those programs, if you don't want to buy nothing, just go to normal map generator online. Click on this website right here. You throw in your texture here. You can just drag and drop it. Look, face mask, black and white. You drag and drop that here, and this little online program is going to turn that into a normal map. You want to disable displacement, AO, specular. We don't want any of that. Maybe you want to play around with strength. You want to reduce that. Cut the fucking rotation. Maybe you want to reduce that You want to make it a little bit blurry or something. If you want to, you can zoom in to see what it looks like. You might want to try this a couple of times. You can invert the height if it doesn't work properly, but just try to play around with this a little bit, although the default should work just fine. And then click on download. That's going to download the normal map onto your computer. And now all you got to do, it's super simple. Pull out the normal map here. You're going to change the color space. It has to be non-color. And now with Shift A, just search for and add a normal map node. And you're going to plug the color into color. You're going to plug normal into normal. And now when you look very closely, you're going to see that it looks like there are some little bumps here. It's kind of hard to see it on this object here, but when you do some close-up renders with a lot of samples, you're going to be able to see that they definitely look like they've been carved into the surface. Okay, the lights are going to behave very differently, especially if you got low lights to make this look to make this a little bit more noticeable. Okay, so that's how you add a texture to your fucking Rolex. That's how I did it here. Maybe there's a better way to do it. If there's a better way, somebody tell me. But guys, for those of you who've been watching the last couple of tutorials who got this far, let me know in the comments so I know if you guys were able to keep up so far, and if you got any questions, let me know. It's Easter date today, so happy Easter to everybody who's a Christian. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. In the next episode, we're going to work on the fucking strap here. We're going to work on the little crown and all the other details, the glass. We're going to put together some animations. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the fucking channel, and I'll see you in the next one.